and had a great time with that. But we're now playing catch up in the month of September. So tomorrow, new video drops is my review of Alien Romulus, which is I have a weird relationship with the Alien franchise. So make sure you tune in to see how I feel about that movie. But we're not here to talk about aliens, although some of these movies may or may not have aliens. Uh, we're here to talk about back to school movies. But first, getting back into actually where we are on topic. Nick, how's it going?
Doing all right. Enjoying an extended weekend and going to do some overtime for the sweet holiday pay on Monday. Uh, Celebrating my eighth wedding anniversary tomorrow with my wonderful wife. And overall, just enjoying a beautiful end of the summer up here in the Pacific Northwest. Getting out and hiking and shooting and hanging out with my friends. And yeah, I'd say it's been one of my best summers in a long time, and things are going very well.
Nice, nice. You've had weather where you could do that. We finally got under 90 today, so it's a pretty
Wow.
big deal. I had to put on a jacket. It was wild times here in the heat
Cold
bowl
by
that is
August
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma standards. Man, don't catch a chill down there.
Oh man. Oh, so yeah, what we did was uh we each picked three movies that had to do with school, but they had to be weird genre movies. So unfortunately, we're not going to be talking about uh, Dangerous Minds, although I think probably could. That movie, I don't know if that movie holds up. But we are all over the map in genre films with action, horror, sci-fi, a little bit of comedy thrown your way. But but all related to that dreaded time of year when all those kids got to go back to school. I know mine is not wasn't excited, especially now that he has early morning band practice. Not a fan. Uh, and also, this kind of is weird because it marks mine, at least. I know you're a year ahead of me. Uh, uh, this is my 20th high school graduation, and what do they call it? High school reunion. We would theoretically have one. This is the 20th year anniversary. Words. I'm a professional. Um, so not only that, but we are old men talking about high school movies.
Yes, nothing less creepy than that.
No, which honestly we'll get to later on with this list about old men talking about high school and whether what they're writing or doing. So, do you have anything before we get started?
Yes.
All right. So we're gonna just kind of do these in chronological order. Well, first, I guess I should pop in here and see what is going on in the chat. Logan, that sucks, dude. There's been something going around my work lately that I've luckily been able to avoid. So that's why I'm kind of glad I'm off on Monday, so that hopefully they've get it all cleaned up and wiped out.
No, I've not been up here. No hunting venison yet. I know I've got several friends who are getting ready to store up for the winter and go out and kill some deer because hunting season's upon us up here in the Great White North. I don't partake myself, but used to, and it's a cool hobby. But no, no, not big on hunting. And I think that was probably addressed towards me because of me running around out in the woods up here in the Northwest. And it's wonderful. Yeah.
I When Amber and I first got married, I went hunting a few times with her family, and I feel like for the most part they just kind of took a look at me and they were like, just put him in a tree where he can't hurt nobody. Like I'm not even sure the gun had bullets, and so it was mostly just like me sitting in a tree stand at like 6 in the morning reading, real like man stuff. Um,
Super manly.
yeah, this was like birds. When's the breakfast? Um, or like listening to a book on tape. Or it got to the point to where they would still go hunting and they'd be like, "Hey, Jason, do you want to come out hunting with us? And I would say no, because this RV trailer has a VCR and both The Matrix and Smoking the Bandit on VHS. I'll be fine here. You guys go on without me. Yeah. To put it in perspective, it got below 90 today, and as I was unloading our truck this morning, we also got in 2 boxes of de-icer. So I figured now that we've below triple digits, the ice is coming any minute now.
Yes, it is imminent. Given Oklahoma, that's definitely not beyond the realm of possibility. Oh, before I forget, and before we move on to our back to school movies, did you do your duty as an Oklahoman and go see Twisters?
No, we were going to, and then everybody bailed on me. I'll let you know how hard it is. When I do go to the theater, know that I'm really putting in the effort because everybody wants to go. I get ready to go, and then they're all like, I don't want to go. And then sometimes I'm like, well, I'm going by myself. I don't care if I have to drive the hour there and the hour back alone. And there's sometimes where I'm like, man, I could just watch a video on YouTube. Now that it's out digitally, I plan on watching it, but I did not. I failed as an Oklahoman.
Uh,
Sorry.
I went and watched it. It's exactly what you think it's gonna be, but as a weather-based action movie, I quite enjoyed it. They shot on location in Oklahoma quite a bit. You got to see El Reno get destroyed. I enjoyed it. It's not high art, but man, it's an entertaining movie. Pretty much in line with the original.
We did rewatch the original, and it still holds up. There's one scene where you first see the tornado in the water. You're like, that doesn't look good, but otherwise, all the effects still look really good. It still holds up quite a bit, and it's got Bill Paxton, so like it's instant minimum 2 stars.
Yes,
So we, like I
but
said, oh, go ahead.
we are not here to talk about tornadoes today. That's for another day. Man, we need to do a natural disaster episode.
Oh my
Sorry,
goodness.
wild tangent. Back to school movies.
Half of them would be Roland Emmerich films. That's fine. Yeah, so let's start with these movies came out a month apart in the exact same year, and they were both two of the, I want to say, wilder picks on this list. Um, this one was yours, so I will let you start with 1986's, I should say, May 1986's Class of Nukem High.
Oh, the class of Nukem High. So, as some of you might be familiar, this is one of the creations of Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hurst, who have the Troma Film Company, notorious for putting out all sorts of super low budget, incredibly inappropriate genre films. The Toxic Avenger being one of the most well known, but this is also one that is pretty well known. The Class of Nukem High. It takes place in the town of Tromaville, population 15,000, which is the toxic waste capital of the world. There's also a giant nuclear power plant, always in view of any of the outside shots, and this follows a group of high school kids at the Tromaville High School. Uh, as with most trauma movies, there's not just an absolute ton of plot to deal with. Mostly it's about crazy gooey effects and completely random nudity, but that's kind of the charm of trauma. Uh, you have this there's this group of honor society kids who, it's like overnight, they turned into this crazy, almost post apocalyptic gang called the Cretans. Turns out it's because radiation, which has some interesting effects in this movie. You follow this other group of high school students as they get into various misadventures and go to parties and at one point smoke radioactive marijuana, which leads to some interesting results and some rather gross results. I'm gonna be really honest here. Class of Nukem High is just a story loosely connecting various either bizarre sex scenes, monster attacks, or people melting. Uh, it's Yeah, I could try to go on about the plot, but it's a trauma movie. If you've seen many trauma movies, you have a pretty good idea what to expect. And it delivers on what you would expect a trauma movie to deliver on. I have not seen this movie in a very long time. And I'll be honest, I haven't watched a trauma movie in a very long time. But the unique trauma charm is still there, full bore in the class of Nukem High. What did you think watching this again?
So, yeah, because I hadn't watched it since we saw it in like high school. Like we went on this weird trauma kick. Um, I think this is my favorite era of trauma. This Toxic Avenger, Trauma's War. Because even as wild as this movie gets, it's still, like you said, it's very loosely plotted and all this stuff. It still does kind of feel like a movie. Whereas you get into the
Yes.
later trauma stuff where it feels like we're just doing stuff for no reason. Um,
Yeah.
this movie, it almost, if you were to be like a super cinema like snob about it, you could almost look at this movie and say, well, this is kind of they're taking crack at some of the punk teen movies of the 1980s, such as Repo Man or Class of 1984, and making their own trauma version of that, and kind of, but also it's just goofy. There's a scene where uh, a a girl and a guy, after smoking radioactive drugs, hook up at a party, and he is in the middle of a wet dream and he grows boobs, and then she gives birth to the suckling in the women's bathroom. Like, it's just a weird movie. And then you have the Cretans, uh, which are they look like the greatest wrestling faction that ever lived. Um, and they're very progressive with their members. Uh, it's so, like, I wrote all these notes down and just read them is just like, what? None of it. The movie does it. You can't explain it. Uh, I will say the theme song to this movie is killer. Oh, it's awesome.
Yes.
And then watching the movie kind of would like to talk about we built the nuclear plant right next to the school. Made me flash back to that Saved by the Bell episode where they're wanting to put like oil rigs on the Bayside High grounds. That shows you my age. But no, I had a lot of fun with watching this. The only thing I hate is I have it on Blu-ray. I want to find one of the old original DVDs of this because that DVD has the trauma intelligence test. And
Yes.
you have never had more fun as like a 15, 16-year-old than taking the trauma intelligence test over and over again. Because it was essentially like it was a 100-question quiz on the history of trauma and their movies. And when you got a question right, it would show you a scene from one of their movies that had nudity in it. And if you got that question wrong, it would show you a scene from a movie where somebody died horrifically. It was so
I
much fun to take.
it was those old trauma DVDs had so much amazing content in them. I remember the trauma intelligence test. I played it many times on my Trauma's War DVD,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they man, the art of packing as much cool stuff as you could into DVDs becoming kind of a lost art in a lot of ways. But those old ones were amazing, and yes, it was it was a brilliant tactic to get you to go back again and again. Um, see, looking and watching this, I think, especially a lot of the older trauma movies of this era, looks like they had a lot of fun making these movies. It's like we're gonna dress in ridiculous costumes, and you're gonna get green goo all over you at some point, and just overact and be ridiculous. And that's how this movie comes across. It's a ridiculous movie. Most trauma movies, okay, I think everyone I've ever seen are ridiculous.
Yeah.
You you've seen one of the trauma movies, especially of this era, you have a pretty good idea what you're getting into. On my notes, one thing I wrote down was there's a sex scene between the two main characters, and it has the most realistic reaction to a guy seeing boobs I've ever seen. Where he gets, where she takes off her top, and he gets so excited like a little kid, just like wow. Oh, it cracked me up so hard. It's like, man, nailed it. Nailed what being a teenage boy seeing boobs is like.
Plus, if you ever wanted to know what it would be like if Lemmy Kilmister was the president of the United States, this movie gives you that scenario. Which I love the fact that so many of these movies we just have. Oh, it's the lead singer from Motorhead just pops up in these movies.
Yep. He does, and he just pops up. Must have had a good relationship with Lloyd Kaufman because he just keeps showing up.
Yeah.
Like showing up as the narrator in Romeo and Juliet.
So there
Uh,
are like several sequels. Plus, there was like a digital TV show to this movie. What the even more so than this movie, the scene. Oh, I want to talk about that in a second. So, is for you children who aren't super old. I didn't grow up with it. I wish I had. But what I remember of the USA Up All Night was a scene from Class of Nukem High 2. And it was a scene of, for whatever, I don't know the context of it. I only know this scene. There's a man and a woman who are getting ready to hook up. And they both have mouths where their belly button should be. And so, like, there's romantic music playing, and they are going in for a kiss, and you're just watching these two, like, belly buttons tongue kiss each other. And so that's an image that sticks in a young boy's mind for nary 30 years. But no, the one thing I want to talk about, so this movie has all of that, and then at the end becomes a monster movie with a monster that does not belong in this movie because this monster looks absolutely fantastic in a world where we're like running over like cantaloupes with wigs on to crush heads. There's this amazing monster costume.
I It absolutely nailed it. It was just like this gooey, very creative, tentacled, crazy ass looking monster. I just, given the absolute bottom of the barrel budget they were working with, Roma managed to pull off some pretty amazing effects and monsters at times. It's really impressive, especially you can see other movies of the era that cost more money to make that don't look nearly as good in the monster department.
I do have to. I do want to make a special shout out to my favorite character in the movie. It's when the guys in the radioactive suits are going down in the basement looking for the leak or whatever it is. And there's the one guy who's down there in the suit. He ends up getting killed by the monster. But the whole time he's just bitching about his job. He's just like, I'll take you down here, you piece of shit. My favorite character in the whole movie. Because I'm like, yeah, I get that. I'm
Yeah,
doing the job, but I'm
I
pissed about it.
I feel that. What uh oddly enough, Fellini is mentioned multiple times in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
It keeps on popping up. It's like, oh, it's Fellini, Fellini, Fellini. It's like wake up and trying to be a little highbrow in the class of Nukem High, I guess. It was like I think it was mentioned four different times. It was
Well, I mean,
bizarre, just like Tromo movies tend to be.
yeah, I mean, in the same breath, you would mention 8.5 with Sergeant Kabuki Man NYPD. Like, that's just, that makes
Of course,
sense.
they go together like peanut butter and motor oil. Of course,
Uh,
but it was fun watching a Tromo movie again for the first time in a while, and watching one of the iconic Troma movies at that.
yeah. I had a blast with it. It was still a lot of fun. Again, it was one I hadn't seen in forever. I know a couple years ago they showed Troma's War on Last Drive-In with Joe Bob, and so I got to rewatch part of that, and it was still super fun.
I
So I
love Troma's.
may have to go back and watch some of those. Let's see what's going on. Are they so low budget that they can't afford to hire Uwe Ball? Uwe Ball wishes he worked for Troma.
Oh, he
Um,
does.
I don't see Lloyd Kaufman and him getting along very well. Which is hilarious. That Lloyd Kaufman is like this weird little bow tie wearing man, like just a complete carny selling his wares. And if you've ever watched like any of the behind the scenes of when he's like directing these movies, he's like a taskmaster. Like he is like, we're getting this movie made. Get out of my way or do what I say, because we don't have time to dick around. So we got to get this done. So I don't see him and
Lloyd
Uwe
Kauf-
Ball getting together.
Lloyd Kaufman not have time for your bullshit.
No.
But
What are
you know
these
what
cheese
Lloyd Kaufman
sandwiches?
wouldn't do? Fight a bunch of his critics like a lunatic. Uwe Boll, lunatic.
Side note, but this only when are we gonna talk about Uwe Ball? Because we're not doing an episode. I am not sitting down and watching a bunch of Uwe Ball movies. You can't make me.
You don't want to watch Ultraviolet and then In the Name of a King and
I
House
tell
of the
you,
Dead?
I tell you what. You get us to 200 subscribers, we will do it. But until then, no. But I
200
remember,
subscribers. Share. You heard it. Share it with your friends. Share it
yeah.
with everybody.
But this
Go
is like
by
a
and throw bricks to people with notes wrapped around them saying Movie Club Emporium. Don't do that. We're not encouraging violence. I apologize.
yeah. Also, don't
But
forget
no,
this is a team effort. This isn't just me watching them. You're along for the ride.
I can handle it. I've watched Uwe Boll movies. I'll do
That's
it.
what I was.
I just want to
That's,
see a reaction to them.
so I have actually own a couple. I think I still have my DVD copies of Blood Rain, which I bought sight
Blood
unseen.
Rain.
I was like, well, that game's cool. There's no way they could mess that up. It's just vampires fighting. Oh, they ruined it. Awesome. But was so I blind bought. I didn't see it in the theater. I blind bought Resident Evil when it came out. And for whatever you think about those movies, that first one was a lot of fun going
It
into it because
was.
I didn't know all the games at the time. So I was like, okay, what's this? Oh, House of the Dead. I've played that game. That game rules. And so I bought that movie on DVD and couldn't wait to get home and popped it in. And oh, like it was just like I pride myself on never having walked out of the theater for a movie. And even though there's movies that you and I have seen, some together, where I should have, but I did almost walk out of my own home watching House of the Dead. All
Ugh,
right, so
I love our
jumping into
tangents.
our next movie, which came out in June of 1986, Slaughter High. Now, this was a movie I discovered on one of those like weird. I think Morgan Creek put them out like those like here's 10 horror movies on like 2 DVDs for like $5 in a bin. And the one that it's on is actually kind of a stacked set because you get Slaughter High, it's the unrated version. You get 976 Evil 2, which I
Better
think is
one.
kind of better than the first one, yeah.
Oh,
You get
definitely better.
The Unholy, which is a really fun movie with
It is. And Cross.
Ben Cross, yeah. And then there's another one that was a real big one that was on that list. Oh, like Ghoulies Go to College, and then there's another one that was actually like a really good movie. So that was the first time I'd seen it, was watching it on there, and I was just blown away by this weird, weird slasher movie. Uh, so this movie starts out with the oldest teenagers you'll ever see. Carolyn Monroe from Maniac. She plays our main character. She was like 35 when they did this movie. She's playing a high school senior. And
And no offense to Carolyn Monroe. She's beautiful. She looks 35.
they all look
She,
35.
yeah. It's just some of them look a little younger than her, but man, she can have children in high school and looks like it. And when the movie starts, she's supposed to be 17 or 18 years old.
Yeah.
So it's like,
The,
man, that's a stretch.
This is the birth of the "Hey fellow kids" meme. Like this is it. Like forget Steve
Yes.
Buscemi with the backwards hat, or the other one is my favorite is Jigsaw with the backwards hat. This is the original like old person playing child. It's her and this group of friends, and it's just them and then the one nerd kid, and that's all that goes to this school. And they, it's a real like Melvin Toxic Avenger situation because they're like, hey, I'm the most beautiful girl. Excuse me, I'm the most beautiful woman in this school. Um, and I've decided you, nerd, are the one that I want to hook up with in the shower. Just come with me and don't ask questions. Nope, just get in there and get completely naked. Nothing nefarious whatsoever is happening. And they take pictures of this kid naked. They like electrocute him a little bit, and then they give him a swirly. And what's really sad, in all honesty, before we get to the yuck yucks, is the actor who plays our I can't remember his name. I think did I write it down?
I think it's Sidney Scudamore, or
Yeah,
he had a very interesting name.
yeah,
Simon Scudamore. Simon Scudamore. That's it.
yeah. I'm trying to find his character's name. They say it through the whole movie. I don't think I wrote it down once.
Marty.
Marty.
Uh,
Yeah, he
Marty.
is
Yes.
he is fantastic in this movie, and very sadly took his own life like right before it came out or right after it came out. So kind of didn't get to see like the kind of the cult status this movie has because it does have a like it's been reappraised. It's a big get now. It's through Vestron. A lot of people have kind of found this movie, and again, he is phenomenal as this like weird nerdy character. Then to get the when you so anyway they they do that, and the only teacher is this terrible basketball coach, PE coach, who brings them in, and so their idea of getting Marty back is blowing him up in the science lab, um, with like acid. Like it's so weird, and the whole movie you get this whole like backstory with her. They're like, "Oh, Marty, we're so sorry we blew you up with all these chemicals." And you get a jump scare, and the whole first like 20 minutes of the movie is a dream. Keep that in your back pocket. Because now it's our what is it's their it's supposed to be their 10-year or 20-year reunion.
I mean, from how they look, I would say 20-year, but it never specifies. I think it's supposed to be 10-year.
It's our golden 50th year anniversary. But they get invited back to their high school graduation or whatever it's called. I know there's a word for it, but it just is not. My mouth isn't going to say it. Reunion. There you go. So they decide to go back. They all meet up at this. Like the school's even more deserted looking than it was at the beginning of the movie. Like it looks like something right out of like the Overlook Hotel. They all go in, and then one by one are being picked off by Marty in this gestures mask, still wearing. Also, faux pas, Marty. It's been 20 to 30 years since this. You got to take off that Letterman's jacket. You can't wear that Letterman's jacket past graduation.
It living in the past.
Yeah. This is a fun slasher, man. It's goofy. Uh, if you, I think all now you can watch it is the unrated cut, so all the kills are really good. There's one that's like he like fills all these beer cans with like some weird chemical reaction. So if they like dude's like pounding beer, then like his stomach explodes. One guy has a riding lawnmower dropped on his chest while it's whirling. There's this weird little lady. She's like a little young, not Yeardley Smith, who's very loud and very much like Yeardley Smith in like Maximum Overdrive, who like is so upset with everybody dying. It does like every slasher movie. She gets really horny because of it, and her and this other dude get electrocuted. on this bed, which is comically hilarious. One lady gets gets covered in blood, so she gets in a bathtub because every school had a bathtub. If you don't remember growing up, but it turns out the water has turned into acid, so she melts. So all the kills are happening. It's just your standard slasher. Here's where it gets phenomenal. Is so Marty kills everybody after this really long chase sequence with Carolyn Monroe. With good for her, she's wearing like white white knee-high leather boots, and like a weird Jedi outfit this whole time. So running through the school, good on her for her ankles. He kills them all, and then he's like, "Well, that's done." But then they all start coming back as ghosts and or zombies, and they start attacking him. And you're going, "What is happening?" And then, boom, second dream sequence. And you go, no way. There's no way it's another dream sequence. Because you see Marty is like in a coma in a hospital, and I guess has been all this time. So he dreamed the whole thing, but also dreamed the dream from the first half of the movie. But then the movie takes another twist to where it ends with Marty's awake and he's dressed like a nurse, like he's the Joker in The Dark Knight, and he like stabs a needle into a doctor's eye. And so you don't know, is the movie gonna happen for real now? Because that's the end of the movie, and it's just a what the fuck of a horror movie. I think the original title of it was April Fool's Day, which they talk about in the movie. Which I want you to talk when I'll cut you here in a minute, but I didn't know there were so many rules for April Fool's Day. There were like, I think they said it because they filmed in England. It's an English thing. Where like April Fool's Day, man, is from midnight April 1 till noon. Past noon, no April Fools. April Fool's is like a hard cut at like 1 in the afternoon. This movie is wild and weird, and in a world of, especially because of '86, you just think about how many cookie cutter slashers were out at that time. They were all just Friday knockoffs or Halloween knockoffs. This movie is wholly original and just absolutely batshit insane, and I loved it. What did you think of Slaughter High?
I don't have the same enthusiasm for the movie. To me, when I think of low budget slashers of this era, two come to mind: Slumber Party Massacre and Intruder. Slumber Party Massacre, very creative, and is just this bizarre, like female hero, female driven horror movie, but very well done.
Mm-hmm.
An Intruder, which maximizes the setting and has some really good kills and effects. I don't know. Slaughter High takes a while to get going, and it has some interesting ideas in it. The ending being a very, it really added to the movie, I would say, the way it all wraps up, and I quite enjoyed that. But I don't know. It's like the kills were fine, but I didn't think, besides the exploding stomach one, were anything terribly special. It just, I don't know. It didn't strike me, aside from a few of the touches, as terribly original. You know, I did like the setting. I like the old creepy school. Uh, yeah, I don't know. This was made on a very low budget, and I think that it would pretty decently. But and I've definitely seen worse '80s low budget slashers. I don't know. This isn't one I revisit. If you're really into the low budget '80s slashers, it's worth a watch. But I don't know. It didn't really do it for me. Though I will say that entire group of people absolutely deserve to get killed because they are terrible, absolutely terrible.
Yeah. Well, I guess I should have led with, this is not a good movie. Not a
No,
good
it
slasher
is not.
movie. But for like, especially if you're like, if you're Halloween party, you want to put something on. We're all sitting around drinking. This is the slasher you go to. Because yeah, like you said, Slumber Party Massacre is great. The Intruder, the Prowler is one that slept on a lot. Um, but this is definitely a party. We're having a good time with this movie because yeah, it's just you cannot wait for all the characters to die. Like especially the one jokey guy, you just like please, just anytime now, just kill them all. Um, but I just love how bonkers it is of just being like
It is.
it's two dream sequences. It's a movie of three dream sequences. Like it's just so insane.
It is a crazy movie. Another thing I didn't like is that's the soundtrack of this movie is grating. It is terrible.
Yeah, wow, 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 like just weird. Like it's not
It's
even.
like a really bad the old Nintendo games, which had a very short soundtrack on repeat, kind of like that. Only it wasn't good. So it's the slasher movies are my favorite genre, but there's several in the genre I really like. This one just didn't resonate with me. Is either a decent slasher or a super entertaining bad one. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's kind of in between there. But I think for a lot of people, this movie would work.
yeah. Oh well, going back to the music though, you have to mention that it's terrible when it's not blatantly ripping off the Friday the 13th score because it's also Harry Manfredini who did the score for this as well as created the iconic Jason score.
Yeah. Well, you don't win them all, that's for sure. But I will say, reading a little bit into the production of this, I mean, they did this production, they rushed it. The guy who was helping produce it just like did some credit card tricks in order to
Yeah.
finance it. He did it on a shoestring budget. They filmed it in the UK, which wouldn't have guessed that. And the main character, who I will say this, who plays Marty, Simon Scudamore, he does do well in this movie. It's a shame what happened to him, and shocking lack of information about him. He's kind of this mysterious figure. This is the only movie he was ever in, and he passed away shortly after it was released. But I don't know. I think the story behind this movie is actually pretty interesting.
Yeah. Agreed. Let's see what's going on in the chat. There's a cat with sunglasses. All right, I'm in. Um, so moving on to our third movie from 1987. This was your pick. This was a movie like I had kind of circled for years. I had not finally sat down to watch until you suggested it. But I'm excited for us to get into it. It's 3 o'clock high. So I'll let you take the
Three
reins here.
3 o'clock high. I love '80s comedies, like in '80s high school comedies, especially. Better Off Dead being one of my favorite of that genre. And One Crazy Summer, big John Cusack fan. Uh, and I love the ones, especially like Better Off Dead, that are kind of out there and goofy and fantastical. It's just everything. It's kind of reality, only exaggerated somewhat. I caught this on TV years ago. Never heard of it, and it really, really resonated with me. Uh, this is this is a very strange movie, but a movie that they put a lot of effort into, and I really dig it. Anyway, the story follows this student. It's kind of the dorky guy. His name's Jerry Mitchell. As he goes about his day, and he runs the student store. Of course, he wakes up. He's late for school. Microwaves his shirt. Heads in. He's manning the student store. He's part of the school newspaper, and he is given the assignment of interviewing this new student Buddy Revell, played by Richard Tyson of Kindergarten Cop fame, because he's been in other movies, but that's unfortunately a lot of what he's known for. So this new student, Buddy Revell, is has this very formidable reputation of having beat up all these people and being crazy and unhinged. And also, he doesn't like being touched. Oh, poor Jerry makes a mistake and accidentally taps him on the shoulder, at which Buddy Revell tells him that at 3 o'clock after school, they are going to fight in the parking lot. And the rest of the movie follows Jerry as he's going about his day trying to prevent this fight from happening. Because his buddy Revell is drastically bigger than him, and he's kind of Jerry's this meek little character. And all the weird adventures and things that happen throughout the day as he's trying like hell to avoid this fight, while romancing several different women at the same time. Uh, it, it's great. It's just such a bizarre series of events, and the way it's filmed with just like all the strange camera angles and tracking shots. There's a few tracking shots in this movie that are really well done. The guy who plays Jerry Mitchell, Casey Simesco, he's one of those guys. You've seen him in other things. I remember him from End of Days. I don't think he had much in the way of leading roles other than this movie. His career never quite took off beyond supporting roles, which is a shame. I really like him as the main character of this movie. Richard Tyson's another one. He plays a great heavy in a movie. He's a great villain. He's intimidating. He's unhinged. He really seems like a threat. And you have all these bizarre characters littering the movie, and it's a lot of fun. It's a strange one, but it's one that I think is unfortunately very slept on. So what do you think?
No, number one, this movie opens with two things I'm always here for, and it's a 1980s impossible teenage boys room. Like, it's just always the coolest you could ever imagine a room to be, with a Tangerine Dream soundtrack. Like, get out of here! Like, I
Yes.
was instantly
Yes.
in. I love this little subgenre of movies. It's the proto Ferris Bueller. It's the One Crazy Night movie. You know, After Hours, Harold and Kumar, Adventures in Babysitting. I love this. Like, it's just one insane thing happened the other in the course of a few hours. Richard Tyson. I know you talked about Kindergarten Cop. Yes, he's whatever Chris his name is. He'll always be
Colin
that.
Crit.
He'll always be that guy from Two Moon Junction for me. Thank you, Sherilyn Flynn. But no, I actually had a blast with this, and I was like looking into it, and I don't know if it was the director who was it that says like this is his like remake, his '80s teen remake of High Noon, and I was like, okay. Uh, the guy he
It
is
is.
great, and he's great, and he's in Young Guns. He's the one who's not Kiefer Sutherland or Lou Diamond Phillips or Emilio Estevez. He's great in Storm of the Century as kind of like Tim Daly's number two.
Right. He is in
Uh,
that.
he's so great at this. Just like it's like a kind of like anti Ferris. Like he's not an anti Ferris Bueller. He's like a mix, but he's like cooler than the guys from Weird Science, but not quite as cool as Ferris Bueller. More realistic, cool, weird kid. But to me, what makes this movie is all the other characters. You have Jeffrey Tambor as like the shop teacher, or the not shop teacher. He like is the teacher in charge of the store where he works. You have Lisa Simpson running around this movie for like one of her first main roles. Mitch Pileggi
Mitch,
pops up,
yes, playing the
and
the school resource officer, and he's great in that role.
uh, we're gonna get a double dose of John P. Ryan because he's in this movie as well as the one we'll talk about next. As the old guy, when they do finally have the big fight, he's kind of like the teacher's like in the middle of them. No, I actually had a ball. I had a ball with this, and did not realize that um in like the mid to late aughts, This movie and Adventures in Babysitting both got weird, less funny remakes
Really?
because Adventures in Babies, it's the Jonah Hill movie The Sitter. It's just Adventures in Babysitting. He has to take three
Yeah.
kids into the city.
I
This
mean,
movie,
yes.
this movie, it's totally that Charlie Day Ice Cube movie, Fist Fight, where they're teachers, and there's a
That's right.
so it's like this weird like these two like offbeat same kind of subgenre comedies both got weird, kind of less funny remakes that nobody
Oh man,
acknowledges because these movies are kind of lost. But
I watched Fish Fight I think last year, and I can't believe I didn't put that together. Yeah, it blatantly rips off this movie. It just doesn't do it as well.
no,
Uh, I
no,
I I think just the amount of imagination and skill that went into shooting this movie and writing the characters, it is so slept on.
yeah,
A lot of people know a lot of the more mainstream 80s comedies, and this movie didn't do well when it came out critically or commercially, and it's a shame because man, it is something. It's a very unique. I mean, how many it has all these different elements going into it, and yeah, I wrote that down. The Tangerine Dream soundtrack. Come on.
was
Uh,
this was this pre or post Bueller? It has to be post, right?
no, I'm not sure.
Because I feel like
Uh,
I
came
feel
out.
like
They came out like at the same time.
okay,
June 11th, of 1986 is when this came out.
yeah,
So this was competing.
yeah.
Oh no, no, this says release date October 9th, 1987. So this
Okay.
would be post Ferris Bueller.
Which I
So
kind of get. Yeah, people were still like Ferris Bueller is great. I think for my money, this one to me is a lot more fun. And I say this knowing that the internet's going to get explode. Ferris Bueller's great. I kind of had more fun with this one. I feel like this one's a little more. This was to me more rewatchable because of how much fun they have with the zaniness of it. Ferris Bueller's fun, but much like a lot of those John Hughes movies, for me, they're not as rewatchable. Some of them are, but not all of them. And I think this, to me, this is a more fun movie, but I think you lose it because of the phenomenon that that Ferris Bueller was. But I'm hoping that this movie kind of does like get more traffic to it. You know how kind of very recently After Hours was kind of reappraised and people are finally coming around to that movie. I'm hoping that works for this because this is, again, a super slept on 80s, really funny 80s comedy.
one thing. So in a lot of 80s teen comedies, usually the brother and sister in a movie tend to have a more contentious relationship. They have this rivalry, and one of the other, whoever's the main character, their sister or brother is an absolute jerk. Oddly enough, this isn't the case. The main character and his sister, whose name is Bree, have a very like friendly, sweet relationship. His sister's there for him throughout the whole movie,
Yeah.
and I found it. I actually liked that for a change. She supports him and she encourages him, and they're there for each other. There's some actually very sweet relationships in this movie, and maybe I'm getting sentimental in my old age. I really like that aspect of this movie.
For sure, because that's even a tire trip that goes all the way up into, I'm thinking about movies from the mid, like something like Accepted, where it's still like that brother and sister enemy rival relationship where yeah, this one is very much I didn't think about the time, but yeah, I'd think about it now. I was like, yo, it is kind of a breath of fresh air that they're just kind of there for each other. Like she knows he's a
They
big
like each
dork,
other.
but they're yeah. But he's her brother, even though he's a giant dork in a lot of trouble.
It's just seeing the ways and how far he will go to avoid fighting this hulking guy who definitely not a teenager, Richard Tyson, when he made this movie, because he's a big dude. My wife always like, man, that guy's a huge neck. He's intimidating. He looks like the high school bully who's been held back way too many times that you would be utterly terrified of. So it does. The movie does end with a big old fight. John P. Ryan says a line that I just love. He goes to Jerry, he says, "Don't fuck this up, Mitchell." It just comes out of nowhere, and it's great. And somebody else yells, "Cripple the dick." It's great. It's got a lot of funny touches like that. Jeffrey Tambor, earlier on in his career, he's great. He's great in everything he does, and he has a very small role in this movie, but it's wonderful. Good to see a lot of people that you've seen in other things in a really fun movie. I highly recommend this one to people.
Yeah, I hope, like I said, I hope it gets discovered here soon because a lot of people I think are gonna have a lot of fun when they discover this movie. So when we decided on Back to School, this was the movie that I instantly was like, this is the one. Whatever hell or high water, this is the movie we're talking about. And that is 1990's Class of 1999. Now I saw
Hold that thought.
this. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Hold that thought for a minute. I need to run. I'll be right back.
Yeah, yeah. We'll do a little vamping. Who's still here in the chat? It's just still the cat with sunglasses. So we need more. What do you guys want to talk about? I guess we can play show and tell while Nick's gone. I'm a giant dork. You guys been following the popcorn bucket craze? I'm not gonna like whip out the doom bucket. Calm down. But my sweet put upon wife made sure that I was able, because I had to work today and I had misset my order for the wrong day, was able to get me the new Batman popcorn bucket. And it rules because you can put popcorn in it, but why would you? I'm doing this one handed. Really, I just wanted to show this thing. Also, I've used it as like a expenditure on my taxes. No. But it's super cool because I'm gonna get in trouble tonight because she's gonna like turn that fucking thing off. But no, because Batman's needed. So I was vamping while you were gone and showing off my Batman bucket again because it's kind of freaking cool.
That's pretty sweet.
All right, so I I don't know when we saw this movie, to be honest, for the very first time. But I
I
saw
know.
this long before I wanted to get to that story then. I saw this long before I saw Class of 1984. And so, boy, was I not prepared for what that movie is compared to what this movie is. Because they're both made by the same guy. And he was like, I made this movie. It's about like a teacher who goes to the school. And it's like Class of Nukem High, but seriously. And like he ends up having to like fight this like twisted like purge guy, like kid. It ends horribly violent. It has a great performance by Roddy McDowall in it. It's a little too on the nose when he like totally pulls the gun on a student to get him to answer questions correctly in class. It's a little rough. And so to go from that movie, which is very centered and very realistic, to this movie, and let me tell you why you're gonna love this movie, because these are all the movies that Mark L. Lester brings into this school movie. And so it's if you love Escape from New York or Mad Max or The Terminator or RoboCop, you're gonna love Class of 1999 because in the far post-apocalyptic future of 1999, the world is a hellscape, and the only thing for people to do besides be in prison is to go to school. And so our main character, who is not, I called him not Corey Feldman. Um, he gets out of prison, so but he can only go to school. Meanwhile, Stacy Keach, and what I can only describe as a anime villain come to life, with this look he has. He has like white contacts in. He has a bleach blonde like power mullet. Um, but like it's all pointy where it shouldn't be pointy. He talks Malcolm McDowell into bringing in 3 robot teachers to help discipline and teach these kids. Little does Malcolm McDowell know that these robots were originally meant for combat, and so when these cyborgs start reverting back to their combat ways, being a kid in school is no longer safe, and so he has to get a group of kids, including the girl. She's from Fright Night Part Two, the weird
Yes.
little adult kid from Near Dark, and the like goofy guy from Northern Exposure. All have to like don their insane outfits and go shoot up these robots in a school, and it rules. The makeup effects are our teachers. You have Patrick Kilpatrick, who is like king of the TV villains. Again, yeah, John P. Ryan, who completely understands this movie more so than anybody else, because halfway through this movie he turns into Frank Gorshin's the Riddler, and I am all about it. And then Pam Grier, and when I love Pam, who doesn't love Pam Grier? I kind of feel like sadly she's the most underutilized of these 3 teachers, but they are managed to somehow get her naked, even though she's a robot with like her giant like monster chest exposed, while using a flamethrower arm. But you still have like weird robotic nudity in it. This movie's a blast and a half. I cannot stress to you how much fun this movie is.
I, this movie, it's absurd. Beginning with it begins with some of that you like digital. It's like 80s computer digital dialogue crawl talking about how there's been war, there's been all these things happen, and the world's gone to shit. And now the areas around high schools are free fire zones, and where even the police won't go in there. And this takes place in dystopian Seattle, because Seattle
Yeah.
has for decades been a fantastic place to set movies and TV shows in, because it's just a weird damn place. This is some of those weird 80s and 90s cartoonish gangs and how they dress. The gang is called the Blackhearts, and they dress like Boy George if he was trying to be a gangster. It's absurd. They look absurd. They don't seem like realistically no one would be threatened with these by these people, but they look completely like what you would think they do in a movie like this. And it just they got some. They actually managed to like snag some people because like to be in this movie because Malcolm McDowell and Stacy Keach were pretty well known actors at the time. Someone went to them and was like, "Hey, will you be in this movie? It's like Blackboard Jungle or Class of 1984 mixed with the Terminator." Now we all know Malcolm McDowell will not refuse any movie. I'm pretty sure we could have called him in high school and he would have flown down to be in one of our movies in high school. And that would have rocked. Stacy Keach, I, was he just like, okay, I'll be in this movie, but I have to have white contacts and a bleached blonde mullet slash rat tail, and I have to act weird as hell the entire movie. It seems like he was going out of his way to steal scenes in this movie. There's an iconic there's an iconic scene of him eating the banana, which you've probably seen the meme around.
I
Because
have
it
it
is
on my
so
on my
random
notes.
and weird.
I was like, nobody has ever made eating a banana look so terrifying, and just like drinking glasses of milk at the most inappropriate times. He is he is amazing and terrifying and ridiculous throughout this entire movie. He is my
You,
favorite part.
your comparison is like anime villain. Yes, he is like something plucked out of a bizarre 80s Japanese anime. It's almost like it's not even doesn't even necessarily fit in the movie, but I love that he's in the movie. I really love the three actors. You have John P. Ryan, Patrick Kilpatrick, and Pam Grier as these cyborgs. They are great. Patrick Kilpatrick, great villain. He's just seems unhinged and terrifying. Pam Grier's got the kind of sexy thing going on, but she also seems like she could kick your ass because this Pam Grier and she could. John P. Ryan is just unhinged. He is the most terrifying of the three, despite the fact he looks like an old man. He just the way he like he's in the classroom talking about things in just a very matter of factly way, but in a way that just seems terrifying. He spanks a kid. He spanks a kid, and you're like, "Wow, that's..." And everyone's just sitting there staring, watching it, and just in disbelief. And the dude made spanking terrifying. He's
While
just
standing on another
horrific.
kid.
Yes, they have these military cyborgs that are going in there on the forefront of technology, and it takes like no time at all before they're like reverting to combat mode and murdering kids like crazy through all manner of ways. And of course, it ends in this massive showdown between these gangs and the three cyborgs. And it's awesome, considering I said not the highest budget movie. I really like the robot and cyborg effects in it. There a lot of imagination went into them, and they gave the different cyborgs some, like each one of them had their own built-in weapon. One had a flamethrower, one had a rocket launcher, and unhinged John P. Ryan had this terrifying giant claw thing. She got the short end of the stick there, but man, it worked.
As low budget as this movie is, and it is, like we filmed it in like a junkyard with like a bunch of pirate costumes we bought at Goodwill. All the money goes to these effects of these cyborgs, and they look phenomenal. Still, even on Blu-ray, like they look fantastic. The makeup when they're actually still talking, and then at the end where Patrick Kilpatrick like becomes like totally just like a stop motion robot monster. It's so good. And yeah, like you're watching this movie and like it's super brutal, man. The little adult man boy, like that kid gets brutally murdered because they're
I
trying to pin the two gangs against each other.
Yes, that that kid creeps me out. I cannot remember his name. I'm trying looking through the list, trying to figure it out. He was in Near Dark, and he was
Mm-hmm.
unsettling in Near Dark, and he's unsettling in this movie because he just looks off. But I love the ridiculous cartoony gang in this movie. I love the cyborgs. I love Malcolm just being Malcolm McDowell, and most of all, I love Stacy Keach and his ridiculous look. I would watch a spit-off movie just about Stacy Keach's character. Absolutely. It's just this is weird. It's another one kind of like 3 o'clock high. How has this movie not been like discovered as this big cult classic? So my story with this movie is my friend Josh Kidd, old youth minister in Altus, ordered a copy of this and the sequel, the class of 1999 2, The Substitute, and I borrowed them from him.
Okay.
And 20 years later, I've never returned them. I forgot to. I'm sorry, Josh, if you're watching this. So
Wow.
I've never heard of him. I saw this cover. It's like I am all on board for this. Watched it, and I thought, where has this movie been? How have I never heard of this? And I revisited it fairly often since then, and it's great. Watch it. You need some crazy cyborg goodness in your life. It's awesome. And some of the references they make to the technology is just very quaint now. Like Patrick Kilpatrick cyborg shows him his like pulls back his face and shows him his cyborg face, and he's like, I have my memory is 1 million megabytes, which unlock a lot in 1990, but yeah, that's not that much anymore.
Yeah, I found I found a 3 pack of all three movies on eBay on Blu-ray, and I picked them up. I haven't watched this. I need to watch part two because you have Class of 1984, which feels like a real like Walter Hill type movie, and then you have this movie, and then you have 99 Class of 1999 2, The Substitute, and the trailer makes it look like the robot teacher is the good guy in it. I don't know if he is because I haven't watched the movie, but it's cousin Cody from Step by Step. Um,
Asha Mitchell, yes.
it's like what a weird trilogy of movies. All from well, I don't know
Get
if
re-
did Lester do the
get
last
ready
one?
for the get ready for Class of 1999 to throw you for a loop. That's all I'll say. It goes in some unexpected directions.
But no, man, this is a movie that this is required viewing, especially if you're into like weird genre movie kind of from the 80s and 90s. I put this up there. It's definitely, I don't know if it's on the same pedestal, but it's in the same like trophy case as like Rising Storm, like as this weird
Yes.
little piece of like it's like a secret gift that you that nobody knows about, and you just like can't wait to share it with people because it's so bizarre and so awesome.
Do you know there were a lot of rip-offs of Escape from New York and the aftermath of Escape from New York? Lots of Terminator rip-offs. This is one of the more entertaining rip-offs of those movies. It really is, because a lot of them not great. For example, go back and watch a review for American Cyborg Steel Warrior. Entertaining movie, just not a great movie. But this is very entertaining and surprisingly well done at times.
Well, with that, let me see here. Are we going in here? See if anything new. I'm excited. Speaking of American Cyborg, I finally watched that documentary. Oh man, oh man, it's tragic. The idea of that of anybody losing their lives that way. But after the 4 or 5 hours of that documentary, when you see what happens, and maybe I'm going to diet losing weight for Jesus hell. But I was like, you know what? Good. But now we're gonna enter the '90s. We're gonna jump. I guess we did with that one. We're gonna jump 6 years into what really you on paper would not be one of the wildest movies on this list, but I think it's in the running. With 1996's The Substitute.
Oh, Tom Berenger, gotta love him. And this is some peak Tom Berenger right here. So, Tom Berenger plays a mercenary, goes on a mission and comes back and he's has this on again, off again relationship with this teacher who's in one of those rough. Good. Okay.
Yep.
His girlfriend is a teacher in one of those really rough inner city schools. I watched this one with my buddy Tommy, and he was remarking about how back then it's just like they made these kind of schools look terrible and rough, and it's like hold no punches. These inner city schools were terrifying and violent, and just somebody's waiting around every corner to stab you. It's one of those. It's like Dangerous Minds kind of schools, and she runs afoul of a gang leader played by Latin Skeletor himself, Mark Antony. She ends up getting attacked, and so Tom Berenger decides to go undercover as a substitute in her school to figure out who her attackers were and get revenge. Oh, and Ernie Hudson's the high school principal too, and kind of an interesting role that takes a turn at some point in the movie. Tom Berenger eventually calls in his mercenary buddies, who are an eclectic group to say the least, and gunfights and, well, fights involving other weapons and substances ensue. This is just. I forgot how crazy this movie was. I forgot how goofy and weird this movie gets. Oh my gosh.
Number one, you need to watch the substitute. Watch all four of them. They're all four worth it. You do lose. Tom Berenger is a one and done man, and you say he's replaced with Treat Williams playing a different character, because clearly Tom Berenger is just playing his character from Platoon in this movie. Um,
Yeah.
but they're all
Yes.
four worth a watch. The fourth one gives you Angie Everhart, so if you're into '90s movies, you know who that is. I love this movie because it's so like everything about this movie is weird. It's when you I mean, I know they're all like they're all in the early 30s. Again, you have a bunch of adults playing high school kids. Um some of them look older than some of our teachers we had when we were in high school as students. But at the end of the day, this is a movie about a group of mercenaries kicking the shit out of a bunch of children. um
At its core, absolutely.
Yeah, and Tom Berenger is just walking around like he's ready to just start collecting ears at any second. Like he gets into to class the very first day, he's like, "Sit down. You kids want to talk about Vietnam?" And you're like, "Oh no." Again, Ernie Hudson, much like who are we talking about at the first instant? Like your baseline is a 2-star minimum with Ernie Hudson pops in. Who plays his principal, who's like, "Oh, well, he didn't like threaten you, so it's fine." But yeah, and then you just Tom Berenger run around going, "Gotta kill, gotta kill, gotta kill." Cliff DeYoung shows up as this weird coke guy who wants to hire the band of mercenaries, but Tom Berenger doesn't like drugs, so he makes Cliff DeYoung shit himself. Like there's just such these weird side missions, I guess, because they're in Miami. They're in the States because of a botched mission. And I don't know much about how mercenary law works, but I feel like a botched mission means we should be on the run, not hanging out in Miami. Unless it's burn notice. Doing stuff for my girlfriend. But even his cast of characters, where it's like the group of guys, you have Luis Guzman, William Forsythe, like the cast is stacked deep in this movie, and like you said, like
Raymond
it's
Raymond
yeah,
Cruz,
Tuco.
who Raymond Cruz, Tuco Salamanca from Breaking Bad is in it, and wearing his fabulous 1990s overalls and being considerably more toned down than his character in Breaking Bad.
That character is the linchpin for the sequel and the substitute to School's Out. He's played by a different actor who, when a teacher is killed, he's like, "I know somebody who can call," and so he's kind of like, and then I think he ends up dying in that movie. So like, but he's a connection to the sequel. Uh, but no, this movie's like I said, it's like the worst. It's like a prison. It's like when you watched Oz. You saw Oz as a kid because we all stumbled across HBO at some point. We're like, "Whoa, that's what prison's like." Like this makes high school look worse than that. You have. It is funny that you have. Uh. Oh my gosh. Mark Antony is like the big. He's like the big bad until the big third act reveal. Um. Because you think Mark Antony, you don't think big bad. But
Yeah, he is so non-threatening in this movie.
and so like Luis Guzman, he's the computer guy, and so they're like making up these credentials for Tom Berenger, whose name's like John. "Hi, I'm John Smith. I'm here to teach about Vietnam." And like they're like, oh, we made him. He's been a professor at Harvard, and he has like 6 doctorates. And Ernie Hudson's like, why the fuck are you at this school? And he's like, never mind, Ernie Hudson, it's fine. We're the bad ones. uh, the scene with the with when they're throwing the paper at him. Oh my! It's so much fun. This movie's so stupidly fun. I love it. It's just an awesome. Again, 80s or 90s action movie that everything about it is weird, but it works for it, and it's a must watch.
It's it's such an odd it's such an odd piece, and it's so much stranger than I remember. And Tom Berenger playing it completely straight as just this, Tom Berenger, he's that dude has an intensity to him in a lot of roles. Of you buy him as this dude's a mercenary who will 100% kill you. Like there's a fight scene in the library where he like gets rid of his gun. It's like I needed this so he can fight some teenagers and security guards. He's like, I just this dude has a taste for violence, and yeah, he's going undercover to avenge his girlfriend. But you also get the kind of feeling that he really wants to do it as well. This dude just loves war and fighting. Speaking of fighting, at the end, there's an interesting fight, a cocaine fight, where two characters literally have a cocaine fight and throw cocaine at each other. I about died laughing. They're just like they're grabbing fistfuls at it and chucking it at each other's faces. Somebody made the decision to put that in the script and then filmed it and were like leaving that in the movie. God bless them for it. It's amazing.
Yeah, this is required. If you're into dumb action, like just fun dumb action, this is required viewing. I cannot stress how much fun this movie is, and it's just again, you're watching it and you're like the whole time you're like yeah, like it's a stand up and applaud in your own home type of movie, and then the movie ends and you sit down and go, those are all supposed to be children. I just watched a bunch of trained mercenaries just kill a shit out of like 16-year-olds. But it's awesome. Uh, Speaking of awesome, maybe we're gonna come to our last movie, and not only that, but we're wrapping up the millennium. And what's so funny is this movie got mentioned, and this was on my short list. Ended up not picking it. You did. And so what's funny when it was on my short list because this is a movie I watched a bunch. Whereas the other movie that was on that short list was the movie Amber watched a bunch that we didn't talk about. Maybe someday we will. I don't know. I kind of want to rewatch that because I hadn't watched it in a long time. But it came down to this movie that we're going to talk about, which is The Faculty and Disturbing Behavior. And it was like a weird, like Volcano, Dante's Peak, Armageddon, Deep Impact situation. Like you had your one, you didn't watch the other. So The Faculty was the one I watched, mostly because I think it was on. I can't remember what VHS it was. But the trailer for this movie still plays in my head to this day. Where it's like
Yes.
Robert Rodriguez, the director of Desperado and From Dusk Till Dawn, and Kevin Williamson, the writer of Scream, comes a new face of terror. And then you get that weird remake of Schools Out. So we're talking
Okay.
about The
Very,
Faculty.
very memorable trailer.
Yeah. So this was a watch I hadn't watched this movie in a long time. So this is a fun rewatch. We watched it with Ashton. This is the one I could get him to sit down and watch with me. Instantly, it's 1998. As soon as you hear the Offspring song, Needle Drop, I was like, oh, Americana. I had that album. I had that album in cassette. Um, I will say this for nothing else because I know Scream is great. I like most of the sequels. I was never. I Know What You Did Last Summer. Uh, I saw way more of Dawson's Creek than I probably had any right to. And then his last movie, I utterly hated. It was on my worst list last year, the year before. But there's one thing that Kevin Williamson could do, especially in the 90s, was he could write an opening scene to a movie. Because the first like 10 minutes of this movie are fantastic. Honestly, it may be up until you get to the time. It's I put it. It's just maybe below Scream as far as a great opening to a movie. After that, you have a man in his 30s writing teenage dialogue, which is kind of where a lot of things fall apart. But this opening scene of this movie, which is essentially yet another invasion of the body snatchers with this weird, like, meta high school post Scream twist. And only this time they're only if they're going after we're infecting the teachers, which I know we've talked about it multiple times tonight with stacked casts, but my God, this movie. So I'll start with our teachers because honestly, the teachers are more fun characters than our high school students. You have Famke Jensen. You have not Stalker Channing. Was it her name? Is that who it is that plays
Piper Laurie?
Piper Laurie.
Piper
I was
Laurie.
like, you have the woman Lilith from Cheers. She was Frasier's wife, who has never looked hotter than she does in this movie. You have a 1998 Famke Janssen, which I have something about with later. And honestly, the best part of this movie, Robert Patrick as the football coach.
You also, it's like, I don't know if you mentioned Salma Hayek's in it
Yeah.
too. Jon Stewart.
Yeah, I have a note about Jon Stewart here. The bald teacher who's like drinking whiskey, who's been in everything and you don't know his name. Although you do get a Harry Knowles, so it is 1990. Speaking of 1998, Harry Knowles shows up in this movie. He plays one of the teachers in the teachers lounge. He has the two scenes together, but I was like, oh, Harry Knowles. And then with our students, you have a pre-Hobbiton Elijah Wood, which thank God for those movies, in his career. You have Josh Hartnett, who thankfully is finally seeing a resurgence. I haven't seen Trap. I plan to. That's one of the movies I kind of want to cover in this month. But he was fantastic in Oppenheimer. You have Clea Duvall, who is great in Carnival, which is a show I'll never forgive HBO for canceling. And then the one guy who's like not Peter Berg, I can't ever remember who that guy is. Stan, the jock guy.
Oh yeah, Sean Hattasey.
And then the girl, Alex Mack herself.
Jordana Brewster, who went on to be in a million Fast and Furious movies.
Yeah.
Plays a profoundly unlikable character in this movie.
Dude, this movie, like when we start introducing these students and going around the high school, I turned to Amber, I was like, oh, Kevin Williamson wrote Dazed and Confused for assholes. Like that's what that's like the student set up to this movie. They're all unlikable. With the exception of like maybe Elijah Wood. But then again, his dad's Shooter McGavin, so like what skeletons are in his closet?
Yes. Christopher McDonald showing up, Shooter McGavin himself.
Two scenes in this movie, and he steals the movie with just two scenes. Mostly because he's like, porno, say bye-bye. Look, so some of my notes here include sarcastically, great job uglying up Famke Jensen. Cause my God, there's like, oh, look at this hideous beast. Look at her. I'm like, yeah, I'm looking at her. That's Famke Janssen. Like, I can't
It's
not
like
look at her.
throw glasses on her and put her hair up, and man, look at how ugly she is. Who could bear to look at her? Ugh.
Is
Like, come
that
on.
pig monster wearing a cardigan? Ugh. And then Jon Stewart, you know, thank God for the Daily Show because man, you forget that Jon Stewart. He in my mind, like you forget he was an actor. Like he was always just a Daily Show guy, and then when you see him in one of these movies pop up, you're like, oh yeah, you. Hmm. Man, that Daily Show really paid off, huh?
Yeah, I did because he was he wasn't going to quite make it in Hollywood as a big name actor. Not awful in this, just very unmemorable.
Yeah.
Um, for those who
Speaking of
haven't seen the fact,
unmemorable, speaking of unmemorable, Usher, who is all over the poster of this movie, he disintegrates. He evaporates from this movie, which I guess they said like originally he was supposed to be like one of the main dudes, like part of the group, and then for whatever reason they just kept scaling his character back and back and back to where like he's just in the background of a few scenes and has like 2 lines of dialogue, but yet he's like one of the V-shaped disembodied heads on the poster because it's a 90s,
yeah,
so we have that same type poster.
and you're right. He's very very much not as featured as I remembered him being for some reason. Yeah, it's just this movie is. It's like, oh, one of our teachers were actually aliens, and they're these aquatic aliens, and they like infect people, and they're parasitic and take them over. They're trying to infect more people, and that's basically the plot. And this group of students is trying to stop them, and nobody believes them, and the town's getting converted and whatnot. And luckily, Josh Hartnett and his sketchy homemade drugs come to the rescue.
I like that this movie's like, hey kids, don't do drugs unless aliens.
And load up on drugs.
Yeah.
Also, kids, don't play with guns unless there's aliens. Then pack guns. Guns and drugs are bad, kids, unless you're in this situation. Load up.
But to be fair, the biggest crime in this movie is that fucking haircut that Josh Hartnett has. What is that haircut?
Oh my god! I told Bree that. Bree and I watched it. What? It looked like he just was spinning in circles, took some kid's scissors, and just randomly cut his hair. His hair is awful. I know some guys go for kind of messy look. It looks like the extremely bad sort of. It's like shaking hands, 110-year-old grandma who's blind trying to cut your hair. It's bad. It's also hilarious for some reason. His hair always cracks me up. You thought
I
his hair
will.
was bad in Halloween H2O. It's worse than this.
It is, but like I'm watching this going, look, oh, this is so 90s. And then I look down at my white shirt under a t-shirt. I'm like, hey, I still dress like that. Just because I don't have that haircut. Or just carry around condoms and laxatives in the trunk of my car all the time. And bootleg fake porno tapes. Because we feel that second exchange with the porno tape guys, he's like, oh yeah, it's Jennifer Love Hewitt and Nev Campbell. Totally full frontal. Enjoy. And I'm like, that didn't happen.
That doesn't exist, but it's like back in the days where everyone had the internet, you could sling stuff like that. He's like one of those jack of all trades
Yeah.
guys, drives a cool old muscle car and just sells absolutely anything illicit to anybody, including trying to sell drugs to the teachers, which doesn't strike me as a good idea if you're a high school drug dealer, but what do I know?
Well, it's that hideous monster, Famke Jensen. He's trying to maybe possibly old maid her out or get her out of her old maid lonely life that she'll have forever for being so hideous. That he offers her cherry flavored condoms. Oh, speaking of everybody in this movie, like I said, most of the students are unlikable. I feel like that we don't get enough of the teachers. I want more of them. Except who the only one who's like done any service in this movie is Robert Patrick. He is fantastic in this movie because he's essentially playing what if my football coach was a possessed T-1000, and he is awesome. Um, he's literally the best part of this movie, except for there's a part where we're watching the movie, and this is a goof. I don't think it's a goof, but it. I laughed. I had to like stop the movie. I was laughing so hard. So they discover that by doing the drugs, the drugs dry out the water based aliens. So of course we have to have a thing blood test. Only this time it's snort and skag. John Carpenter used blood. We'll just use horse. It's fine. Um, and so there's a scene where, and spoilers for this old movie, Stan becomes infected. And he had been on the football team, but he quit the football team. But then when he becomes infected and he's chasing them through the buses, he has put back on shoulder pads over his regular clothes. So he's wearing like jeans and like it's 1998, so I'm assuming like Airwalks, and then just like a football pad and jersey over his shirt as they're like hunting Elijah Wood in the buses. Go back, I was like, why did he put football pads back on? The CGI is not good. But as bad as the CGI is, it's 98. But the big monster at the end looks phenomenal. I love the design of the big monster.
They did such a good job with that. Yeah, my daughter, who's also watching with us, is like, "Oh, look at the PS1 CGI. It's not entirely inaccurate, but man, they nailed it with the big aquatic monster towards the end. Great job with it. One of the more memorable practical effects of that era."
I also love that because they say like, what happens to the people if we it's vampire syndrome. You kill the master, you kill the little ones. It's like we kill the queen alien, everybody goes back to normal. Does that include the principle that we shot in the forehead, or sexy when Famke Jensen becomes super sexy? She's super sexy now, guys, because she's an alien. Has her head cut off, and then her head grows tentacles and crawls away because if the blood test wasn't enough stuff to steal from the thing, we take that scene. And they're like, no, they're just fine. It's fine. Aliens gone. Bullets
Just
and
glossed over
decapitations
it.
don't matter. That's one of my notes was like this happy ending horseshit of a movie. Like it's super happy ending. Like everybody's with the like Jordana Brewster is now suddenly hooking up with Elijah Wood because Clea Duvall totally pulled an Ali Sheedy from the Breakfast Club and she took off some of her eye makeup. So she's pretty too, guys. And she's dating the former football player. Zeke's playing football now, smoking cigarettes, and possibly committing multiple felonies because he's totally hooking up with Famke Jensen, who is his teacher. And I was like, we're just on in this movie like a dating your teachers like story. Okay, whatever. 1998, that's fine. One constant great thing is these weird 90s band covers of like classic like like Buck the System teenage songs. So like you have who is it? It's I think it's Collective Soul does School's Out. Creed does I'm 18 by Alice Cooper. And then of course you have the class of 1999 singing Brick in the Wall 2. This isn't probably the best Robert Rodriguez movie. It's probably not my top Robert Rodriguez movies. But you can definitely see Robert Rodriguez in it to somewhat. It's fun. Like I said, I need to go back and watch Disturbing Behavior because that's not one I ever really watched. The only thing I remember about that movie was the trailer had the Harvey Danger Flagpole Sitta song in it, and it has Nick Stahl in it. That's pretty much, and Katie Holmes, and that's pretty much it. Because like I said, you either watch Disturbing Behavior, or you watch The Faculty, and The Faculty was the one because it was on every movie we ever rented. I had fun revisiting it, but um, in all honesty, if you're going to go out of your way to watch a '90s like Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie, I cannot praise Abel Ferrara's Body Snatchers enough. The
Oh,
one
it's
he did
great.
with Meg Tilly and oh my god, what's her name? Annabella Arngwar. That movie rules. That's a great uh remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. This one definitely feels like we were like, hey, you made a fun movie with Desperado and From Dusk Till Dawn. Do this. Hey, Kevin Williamson, you sold your soul to the wine scenes. Write this. This doesn't kind of feel like either one of them really have their heart in it, but if you want a peak '90s horror movie, like this is it.
It's definitely one of the more mainstream movies Robert Rodriguez did. Following the success of Desperado and some of his other work, they're like, "Hey, we want you to make a mainstream movie for us and lend your flair to it." And they threw a lot of money and a lot of talent at this movie, and I think it largely succeeds. It's narrative, yeah, it's the thing, an invasion of the body snatchers with the '90s version of the Brat Pack in it. But it's a fun movie. It's got some good effects and a few really memorable performances. Robert Patrick stealing the show pretty much every time he's on screen. I prefer Disturbing Behavior to this. I love that movie, but The Faculty's good for a rewatch, especially knowing what a lot of the people in the movie go on to have some great success. So it's interesting watching it in retrospect in that way.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a fun movie. And who hasn't, been at school and be like, oh man, what if my weird teachers are in fact aliens?
Too bad none of us ever went to school with Famke Jensen.
Oh, I don't know if I could have bared to look at her. Oof.
What a beast. And I just want to say, I know do not be ashamed because I don't know now they're getting people have like reappraised them. But in 1998, 1999, we all owned Human Clay. Don't act like you didn't. We all owned it, and we all listened to Higher, and with arms wide open. It just we did. It's the thing. We all owned that, and we all owned a significant other from Limp Bizkit, and there's just things in our past that we can't unchange.
If you're 36 to 44, you listen to Creed.
Yep.
You very much likely did. They were huge back then. Speaking of which, did you hear Scott Stapp is playing Frank Sinatra in that Reagan biopic?
You know what? I saw that today, and to be completely honest with you, that's the most interesting thing I can think about with watching that Reagan biopic.
Just like, hey, I saw that. That is such a random bit of casting. Who was making a movie about Reagan? It's like, we need someone to play Frank Sinatra. Why don't we get that guy from Creed? Well, that was the decision.
I love that every musical, like something like that, comes up in a movie, and people's only reference of like how to do that is Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. Because like just put somebody in there and then just say their name over and over again of who it's supposed to be, and that's then who it'll be.
Yeah,
Wow, that's great,
that's
buddy.
all they
How
had to do. Love that movie too. Well, that's our 6 back to school movies. I think we had a pretty eclectic mix, and I had a lot of fun watching these.
Yeah, this was
There
this
are
was
some
a fun
interesting
watch.
ones. It was a good mix of funny and horror and wild action.
Yeah,
I definitely like definitely out of these like watch Class in 1999, um, and watch 3 O'clock High.
yeah,
I say definitely also check out The Substitute. The other three I say are worth watching. Uh, but man, 3 O'clock High and Class of 1999 really need to really need to get the credit they're due.
absolutely. No, it was so much fun. Speaking of fun, the now that school started, we're sliding slowly into fall. Not quite to Halloween yet, but things are going to get pretty dark next month. Because next month for September, our live stream, we are going to be covering the Crow franchise. All 5 movies now, plus the comic book, the Sega video game, and those killer, killer soundtracks. Plus our first time reviewing the brand new Bill Skarsgård movie that I'm probably going to have some serious thoughts about.
Yep, I'm. It is flopping legendarily hard. I'm gonna go see it this week at the movies and get that out of the way. I have heard some absolutely scathing reviews for it, so I'm curious. I'm going in with some rock bottom expectations.
But it's going to be fun because, like I said, we're covering the original comic. We're covering all 5 movies, all 4 originals, plus the remake. There was a TV show. Like it was like where it was essentially the Incredible Hulk, but it was the Crow. There was a couple of awful video games, and honestly, if you love '90s music, like 2 of the best compilations you could get of '90s music in one
Yes.
place. Plus, I say top 5 Cure songs of all time with this franchise. So it's going to be an absolute blast. Make sure you dig out your favorite Black Duster and your favorite your favorite Hot Topic makeup because we are going to be covering everything, everything Crow. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
It will be. I have not seen a Crow movie in so long, and I'm about to delve head first into a bunch of Crow movies
Yeah.
of wild, varying quality.
Let's check here in the chat one more time here. I love Major Pain is a movie like I don't know how many times we have like talked about showing it to Ashton and we haven't, and we really should because I love Major Pain. I remember seeing Hocus Pocus and watching it once and being like, okay, and then like that was it for me. Again, to me, there was you were in two like everything was divided when we were kids. Like we were always that's why politics are the way they are now. We were always dividing things. You were either this or you were that, and there was no in between. You either read The Rings or you read Harry Potter. No in between. You either uh, watched Disturbing Behavior or The Faculty. You either watched Hocus Pocus or you watched Ernest Scared Stupid. And I was the Ernest Scared Stupid guy. Um, right, Nick?
Absolutely. Love it. Ernest Scared Stupid. Did not care for Hocus Pocus in the slightest. Weird thing. I want to ask you this. It seems in the last 10 years or so, Hocus Pocus is now being regarded as a Halloween, like this classic Halloween movie. But when we were younger, in our teens and such, and even into my 20s, I don't remember it getting as much love as it does now. It seems to have, at some point in the last 10 years, hit its stride among our generation. People are like, it's traditions. Like, I got to watch Hocus Pocus every year. And
So,
I don't get it, but hey, I'm glad people enjoy movies, so that's
so
cool.
I have a theory. One, I will say, um, is what I remember about liking about Hocus Pocus um, was not the movie, was mostly just watching Sarah Jessica Parker in that movie. Um, but I feel like the reason it is that way now is because as somebody who works in retail and like now it's September, for 3 weeks now, we've been setting on Halloween stuff that is 95% the Nightmare Before Christmas, which will lead into December when we also will carry over the Nightmare Before Christmas. I think we're all Nightmare Before Christmas burned out, and so people are like, "What's next?" And like, if you're looking at that like checklist, you have Nightmare Before Christmas, and then so people are kind of done with it, and so we're sliding into Hocus Pocus. Plus, having worked for this particular retailer I work for, Hocus Pocus 2, and it's just the blatant sell of it because they filmed a scene in a Walgreens can get fucked. Because I heard about that movie every day from beginning to end of that movie and how much we had to promote it because it had a scene where they were in a Walgreens. So hopefully within the next 5 to 10 years, finally, if I'm still working in retail, I can finally shop the Ernest Scared Stupid floor stand and get all my cool rugs and socks and onesie pajamas and squishmallow pillows of one Ernest P. Worrell. Maybe a nice like cool like vintage backpack that looks like a carton of Miak, like something awesome like that.
I got a random fact about that movie. Do you know they recycled the costumes from Killer Clowns in Outer Space for that movie for the
Yeah,
trolls?
yeah, it's the Chiodo
Yes.
brothers.
Love her. It's Scared Stupid.
I remember going to see Tim Allen's The Santa Claus in the theater, and even then being like, "Wait, so if you kill Santa, you become Santa?" Like, what? What is this movie? Um, so yeah, I'm not a fan of the Santa Claus film. I guess there's films now, but I'm also not really a
There's
big
several.
fan of Tim Allen. Like, if you take Tim Allen from my childhood, like I try to remember Tim Allen only from Home Improvement and nothing else, because anything outside of Home, well, and Toy Story, because anything outside of that, I feel like I don't like Tim Allen, like as an actor or a person. So I try to just stick to like Tool Time, and that's it.
Well, you all, I appreciate everyone who stopped by today to join us. We very much appreciate your continued support and your involvement in the chat. Special thank you to my friends, especially my friends and coworkers, Travis and Logan, and my friend Tommy who stopped by. I also want to thank you very much, Amber, for continuing to help us this endeavor. I love you to death. I think you're awesome, and Jason is lucky to have you.
Sure, I wouldn't have this awesome popcorn bucket without her. And don't forget, guys, the gauntlet has been thrown. If you want to watch Nick and I suffer through every Uwe Ball movie, we gotta get those subs, baby. Get them subs up here and
200.
YouTube, because we're not just here every month. Every week there's a new video on YouTube, and like I said, tomorrow we're talking Alien Romulus, and you're gonna find out how I feel about that franchise as a whole. And I won't spoil it here because you need to go watch that video, but it's pretty positive. So make sure you check that video out every Sunday on the YouTube channel at the Movie Club Emporium, every month here at Twitch. And until then, we will see you guys next time, right?
See you later.
Bye.